The relationship between Trudeau and Trump has never been strong. Justin Trudeau famously was mocking Donald Trump during Trump's first term. And so we have walked ourselves into a situation where a president deeply dislikes the prime minister, and it's not good for this country.
Donald Trump has announced that he will put 25% tariffs on all Canadian goods. His justification for this seems to do with the Canadian border, letting fentanyl in and so on. Do you think that he has the moral high ground in this fight?
Well, I don't think he does, because the data that he is putting out to Canada and the rest of the world to justify these tariffs on Canada is just simply not accurate. But when it comes to his decision to put tariffs on Mexico for the same reasons that he does on Canada, that in that case, I understand. I understand why the Americans want to have a significant trade action on the Mexicans, but the figures just don't back up what Donald Trump claims when it comes to Canada. On the fentanyl issue alone, the US CBP confiscated 43 pounds of fentanyl last year coming in from Canada. That is a lot. That is 43 pounds too many. But when you compare that to Mexico, the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol seized 21,100 pounds of fentanyl from Mexico. And the Mexican president is trying to grandstand on the issue and say that her country is not connected to the Mexican drug cartels. They shouldn't be, lumped in with fentanyl issues. But that's just absurd. So when you look at the fentanyl justification to impose the same tariffs on Canada that he's imposing on Mexico, which he has now just paused with Mexico, it really makes no sense. And it's only going to hurt Americans and Canadians, and it's going to drive Canada further away from being a reliable trading partner with the United States. I just don't see how it makes any sense for the United States and for Donald Trump.
There are also other justifications that Trump has talked about. He's talked about US companies not being able to open banks in Canada. He's talked about Canada becoming the 51st state. That might be a bit of a troll, I don't know. And he's also, concerned about trade deficits and saying that Canada has exploited the United States for far too long. How do you respond to these accusations?
So the trade deficit question, once again, I'm afraid to say Donald Trump is just not right about that. Yes, there is a $45 billion US dollar trade deficit with Canada, but that includes American oil purchases from Canada, crude oil, which fuels the American economy. If you remove the energy and oil purchases from the United States, the trade relationship becomes a trade surplus for the United States. And Canadian heavy crude oil is the oil that the United States has relied on, that their refineries are built around refining. And that heavy crude oil fuels diesel, which basically fuels the U.S. military. So when you strip away the fact that, when you strip away the oil purchases from the United States, from Canada rather, that becomes a trade surplus of $45 billion on the U.S. side. So that when it comes to the trade question, this idea that the United States is subsidizing Canada on trade is just not accurate. The United States gave $7 million in foreign aid to Canada last year. That's not $200 billion. There is an argument to be made about Canada's lack of defense spending and what America perceives as basically protecting this country. And there is a discussion that needs to be had on that. When you look at the protectionist policies of Canada, this has been in existence since Canada was created. Our country is built upon protecting our industry and our interests while maintaining good trade with the United States. But we are a country that simply cannot compete on a completely open market with the United States. So when it comes to agriculture, we have always had a supply management system, a protectionist system on our dairy producers and our other agricultural industries. And when it comes to the financial industry, well, that's just also the way it's been in this country for a long time as well. These are not new situations. These are not things that are brand new. Donald Trump would have had to deal with this in his first term as president. So it's unfortunate. And then his other justification, Stephen, is about illegal immigration. And there is a discussion to be had about Canadian border security. There are too many known terrorist encounters on the northern border. In fact, since fiscal year 2022, the number of terrorist encounters at land ports of entry on the northern border has exceeded by a long way the known terrorist encounters at the southern border. So that's a very serious problem, and I understand that. But crippling the Canadian economy is not going to make this problem easier to solve on our end. It's only going to make it more difficult.
So in your view, obviously this isn't justified. What do you think is really going on here? Why do you think Trump is being so punitive against Canada? Is it something to do with Justin Trudeau?
Well, it absolutely does have a lot to do with Justin Trudeau. The relationship between Trudeau and Trump has never been strong. Justin Trudeau famously was mocking Donald Trump during Trump's first term. That mockery went back and forth. They continued to take shots at each other. And it's been well known in this country that Justin Trudeau's government was completely caught blindsided by Donald Trump's victory in 2016. Nobody prepared for the possibility that Donald Trump could become president in Canada. Nobody prepared on this side of the border for that outcome, and I have to imagine that they weren't preparing for that outcome again. And so we have walked ourselves into a situation where a president deeply dislikes the prime minister, and it's not good for this country. The president has routinely said that he wants to make Canada the 51st state, and when you look at the way that Trump has handled this situation by imposing the same tariffs on Canada that he has on Mexico, you look at the facts, which show that Canada is only 1% of the problem for which Donald Trump rightly is concerned about. You have to start asking other questions. What could this really be about? I look at the way Trump has been talking about Greenland, for example, using national security concerns to justify the potential use of military force to annex Greenland, which will likely be a purchase, I imagine, of Greenland. And the justification is national security. The same goes for the Panama Canal. I think the United States looks at Canada as a country that is useful to the United States' national security interests. We have a major presence in the Arctic. And I think the United States wants to have more control over Canada, wants to impose more control over Canada to strengthen their national security concerns. And maybe they believe that by crippling the Canadian economy or threatening to do that, they can then force Canada to concede to things that for a long time our country has refused to accept, such as military bases in Canada and more military presence in our country. I think there's a serious national security element to this that is not getting enough attention, and I think it really ought to be.
Justin Trudeau recently resigned, and he's kind of a lame duck at the moment, waiting for a new prime minister, a new Liberal leader to come in. It looked like he was going to lose the election. Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative leader in Canada, was miles ahead in the polls. Is it the case that election now looks closer because Donald Trump is such a hated figure in Canada? He has maybe given the Liberals, which are essentially the left-wing party in Canada, a bit of a lease of life, a bit of a boost.
Well, it has given them a boost, and the gap between Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative leader, and the Liberal Party, which is currently without a leader, was very wide. But since this entire saga began, Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party have seen their popularity rising a little bit, but it is enough to make people consider the possibility that the expected outcome may not be the one that we see. That being said, I still believe that there is enough resentment in this country to the current government, to the Liberal government, that I think that predicting anything other than a Conservative majority at this point would be highly unlikely. But it has given them a boost, and I think that is exactly what Donald Trump wanted to avoid. I think a lot of his initial taunts toward Justin Trudeau when he was president-elect were designed to destabilize Justin Trudeau and destabilize the Canadian government, and they essentially got what I think they were looking for, which was Justin Trudeau resigning, which was his cabinet basically imploding on himself. And now they have given the Liberal Party and the prospective new leader of the Liberal Party, Mark Carney, the former governor of the Bank of England, a chance to try to rally the country around the flag, to appear as though he is a wartime leader, essentially, because right now in Canada, people are looking at this as existential. They very much see this as a serious challenge to our sovereignty and a trade war, with the implications being significant. In Ontario alone, they are expecting 500,000 people that could be out of a job. They could be laid off because of these tariffs. And the numbers across the country could be into the very high hundreds of thousands. This is a serious issue, and that creates a climate for a new prime minister to rally around the flag and to get a significant boost, something I don't think the Donald Trump administration wanted to see.
Mexico seemingly caved in, or at least came to a deal with America before the tariffs came in, to put 10,000 National Guard on the border and so on. I mean, who knows what the impact of this deal will be? I guess we'll see. Time will tell. But it looks like Trudeau and Trump haven't come to a similar arrangement. It doesn't look likely that that's going to happen. Isn't it the case that this is actually useful for Trudeau and useful for the Liberals to have this kind of trade war with Trump? Because again, as I mentioned, politically, this is very helpful for the Liberals. So do you expect there will be a deal, or do you think that the Liberals will basically say, no, let's continue, let's have this trade war because this helps us politically?
I think that actually there is a possibility that Justin Trudeau doesn't accept a deal, and whatever deal that looks like, it will be obviously heavily in the favor of the United States and U.S. interests. And yes, I do believe this will benefit the Liberal government. It is actually a significantly unifying issue in this country right now. I'm afraid to see and saddened to see some of the recent viral videos of Canadians at sporting events booing the U.S. national anthem. I think that that's in very poor taste. But Canadians are very upset. They are unified now around this and looking at the situation and saying, all right, well, we need to fight for our country. We need to support our country, support our small businesses. So yes, I do believe that there is a possibility that Justin Trudeau would not accept a deal that is put forward to Canada, if a deal is to be put forward. And what that deal will look like, I think, will result in a significant loss of Canadian sovereignty. I have to imagine that. I imagine that Donald Trump will only drop these tariffs if he can have more American enterprise in Canada to break through our protectionist policies and to impose American commerce on Canada, and also potentially put military troops in Canada on national security issues. That is just deeply unpopular in this country. So there's a possibility that they just try to play chicken with this and see how long it can go. But either way, it's going to be very painful for this country.
It's ironic that Canadians have suddenly found nationalism, particularly the Liberal Canadians. You know, Trudeau just a few years ago was talking about Canada being the first sort of post-nation or something. Maybe you can touch on that. But final question. Pierre Poilievre, leader of the Conservative Party, he's obviously reacted saying, I'm putting Canada first and, we should basically stand up to Trump. Do you think that he's responded well to this crisis?
I would say that Pierre Poilievre has responded the only way that a Canadian opposition leader could respond, and that is, as he said, to put Canada first, to stand up for our interests, and to not appear to be trying to appease the United States. It's so unpopular to do that at this point in time, and people are looking for leaders to stand up and, as he says, put Canada first. It's a sentiment that Canadians are begging to hear, and we're starting to hear it. It was 2 days ago when Justin Trudeau held a late press conference, responding to Donald Trump's imposition of these tariffs, and he mentioned Canada's culture and our values, which, as you point out, is deeply ironic because when he became prime minister, he told the New York Times that Canada has no core identity and that he wanted to see Canada become the first post-national state. And it was Donald Trump's tariff action that has now basically changed Justin Trudeau's mind on this entirely. I guess that's a good thing because we're now starting to see a resurgence of Canadian nationalism and Canadian identity. But we have, for the past 10 years, been led down a path of feeling as though we have to apologize for everything that our country did in the past, that we should feel sorry for ourselves, that we should not be proud to be Canadians, and that we are quite literally a genocidal country. That's what the government imposed on us. So it is deeply ironic that that's now where we are at. Better late than never, I would say, because it is desperate in this country. It's required sentiment, not just in Canada, but in the UK as well, in other countries where for so long we have been beaten down by people who think they can lecture us about things that happened decades ago, and their interpretations of those events are debatable as well. So it is unfortunate that we are here where we are right now. I think the president is obviously wrong to continuously call on Canada to become the 51st state. There is no appetite for that in this country, and there will continue to be a diminishing appetite for collaboration with the United States if the U.S. continues with this.
I also think Trudeau has misinterpreted history a little bit as well. During his press conference, he was talking about Canada going into the Second World War. That had nothing to do with helping the United States. It was about helping Britain.
Exactly.
And on one final note, I think, one thing that both our countries can be proud of is that victory in 1812. Thank you so much, Harrison, for joining us. Appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the GBN America YouTube channel.